That's so beautiful.
My name is Leah. I'm originally from Japan. I was born and raised in Tokyo. My father is a Colombian immigrant who grew up in Queens. And my mother is a second generation Zainichi Korean. So when I started reading your book, admittedly, I'm only about a third of the way through Pachinko.
Colombia appears in that book.
I'm sorry?
Colombia appears in the book.
I'm excited to get to that part. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten there yet.
I'm excited for you.
So one of the first things I thought about like 3 pages in was like, the people who need to read this are Japanese people. Should be one of the main audiences, you know, who don't see Koreans as human. I feel like them being able to kind of experience this book and relate to characters that they may not see as someone that's relatable to them, I think that's really important. So I looked for a Japanese copy because I wanted my mother to read it. And I found that there is not a Japanese copy. There's not a Japanese translation of Pachinko.
Not yet.
Not yet. So
it's been purchased by 27 territories, I think, now. So it's going to come out by Bungi Shinju, and apparently it's in the works.
Interesting. Okay, so that was one of my first questions was that in the works, and can I help you
But
make
most
that happen?
Zainichi Koreans have been reading it in Korean, and that's already out. And that's by a publisher called 문학 사상사.
So I think, but what do you think is the main message that Japanese, non-Zainichi Koreans, but Japanese folks, what message should they be getting from your lectures, your works of writing? How can we bridge that gap between Japanese and Zainichi Koreans through fictional writing?
Oh, Leah. I like your question. I think it's an important question because I believe in reconciliation and reunion. With all my heart, I do. And I believe that the only way we can really think about other people is through empathy, and that's hard to do. And one of the things that I really hasten all of us against is to tell people what to do. I try to create drama. I hope that you find yourself in the story. I sort of joke that my agenda in life is to make all of you Korean. Because I think that if I can make all of you Korean, then you would see that all of us are connected. But I think that being didactic doesn't seem to work. And I think that forgiveness is a difficult thing. It's difficult for everybody, especially for those of us who've been injured and for those of us who injure. So again, I'm saying something that's very Christian. Whether or not people like that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I'm really angry about a lot of things. So sometimes I'm not in a position to forgive. I'm still mad. But I tend to work it out through my drama, but in terms of a message, I don't think I have a message of the Japanese. I do think that what I have tried to do is to be honest about the history. And that's the reason why I do so much homework. I do a lot of homework because even though I may start out with a position of an argument, I often find that my argument is wrong in the face of evidence, in the face of reality. And this goes back to the question of reality corrects preconception. There are many Japanese people who are suffering in Japan today because Japan has a myth of being a monolithic nation, which it is not, as you know.
I am proof of that.
And you're proof of that. My husband is half Japanese. My son is a quarter Japanese. So clearly, I think it would be preposterous for us to think that Japanese people are evil. It's almost like saying that anybody's evil if they've had any kind of colonial history, and that's silly. What I do think is evil, because I believe in the existence of evil, is dishonesty about one's history. So I think that if we are honest about history, then we can begin to consider reconciliation.
Thank you for your work. I look forward to reading it in Japanese too.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sun. I'm from South Korea and I love to dance as well.
Oh.
So you're correct.
By the way, I actually asked my son, I said, okay, I think I should do some sort of dance gesture. What should I do? And he's like, he looked really embarrassed. He goes, you could do a shoulder roll.
So I resonate with your story in some ways because I also came when I was young to the United States at 16 years old. And I stayed here since and studying. And now I'm at grad school and thinking more about my career. And I do see myself going back to Korea at some point. And
Have you done kunde?
for but maybe for Bunde as well.
Okay.
Have
Bunde
I
is
gone?
military service. Sorry.
Did you ask if I have gone?
Yeah, have you gone?
I haven't. No.
How old are you?
22.
22. That's adorable.
And so as I'm thinking more about like possibility of me going back, and as a social scientist, thinking about I will study about the Korean policies and Korean society, and you are precise, and I always had this sense of vulnerability in that because I am Korean, but I don't know much about Korean society because I've been in the U.S. And I was wondering if you also share that component of vulnerability in your story, because you are precisely doing that. You live in U.S. for the majority of your time, but you're writing about Korea and Korean society. So I was wondering if you have that sense of vulnerability in your work, and how you have navigated that, if you have.
I am very vulnerable. You could hurt my feelings. This is one of my problems, is that I'm constantly worried and anxious and insecure. I've actually used the verb several times today of how I'm afraid. That's actually an adjective. But I fear, I worry, and part of it's because sometimes people try to make me feel inauthentic because my Korean language skills are actually quite poor. And I used to feel really bad about it, and now I don't feel bad about it anymore. Not even a little bit. If you just try to do that to me, I'll just feel like, whatever. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, and the reason I'm being a little flip, but I'm being a little flip because I want you to have courage for whatever people try to make you feel inauthentic about. Because when people try to make you feel ashamed, because they may have expertise and you do not, you have to wonder, why are they doing that? That's not encouraging anybody. And it's certainly not an educational idea. And pedagogically, it's stupid. So one of the things I want to encourage you to think about is that it's impossible at the age of 22 or even at the age of 50 to be an expert about everything. But I have figured out this. There are people in this room right now who know a shit ton more about Korea than I do. That's awesome. But the thing that I feel like I can do better than most people is that I could feel more and use that feeling more with my craft of fiction. And that's my little field. And I could try to do that as well as I can. I don't know what your field is, but I feel like when you do find your field, initially you're going to be stumbling, but that's normal. So my son is 21 years old, and very often when he feels like something is not going well, I think, well, is it because it's difficult, or if it's because it's unfamiliar to you? It's a very different thing. When you start something, it's unfamiliar. But it doesn't mean that you're bad at it, it's just unfamiliar. But I really encourage you to find your field, and if people try to make you feel ashamed, I want you to know that it's their shame, not yours.
So I'm a second semester senior, and a lot of my thoughts recently have been about my family and my parents. And my mother, as we spoke, she owned a hagwon, and she spent, I don't know, a lot of time raising me, educating me, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on me. When we didn't have enough for anything else.
But you're here.
I'm here. So this is my question. As I graduate, and from your experience as a mother, a daughter, ethnographer, a writer, how do I say thank you to my mom and tell her I appreciate what she's done?
I'm gonna cry. Albert. Oh, that's so beautiful. She must be very proud of you. I think you did that. I think you should go tell her. All of your education was so freaking great that you made an author cry. Thank you, Abby.